July 3rd, 1944. 5:12 a.m. Western Kansas, outside Dodge City. The sun isn't up yet, but the sky is already changing, black dissolving into deep purple, then into a thin, gray-blue line stretching over a flat horizon that looks like the edge of the world. The wheat gets there first. Before you see the farm buildings, before you see the people, you see the wheat. Endless rows of it, heavy heads bent, turning from silver to gold as the first light brushes across them. The air is cool for the moment, with that damp, earthy smell that only exists just before a blazing summer day. Then you hear it, a distant rumble on the dirt road. An olive-drab GMC truck appears as a smudge of dust, growing larger as it bumps its way toward a sagging wooden gate. Canvas top, white star on the door, and in the back, behind the slatted sides, shadows in field gray uniforms. German. The truck grinds to a halt in a swirl of dust and chaff. 2 U.S. Army MPs hop down first, boots hitting the packed earth with a familiar practice thud. White helmets, black armbands, M1 carbines held loose but ready. One of them, Corporal Jack Harlan, bangs on the side panel with the flat of his hand. Ostehen, boys. Everybody out. The Germans move slowly at first, stiff from the ride, then drop down one by one. Sunburnt faces, tan Africa corpse caps, a few still with the faded cuff titles of Africa on their sleeves, souvenirs from a lost theater. They squint at the wide-open landscape, blinking as if someone has untied a blindfold. This is not the desert they were captured in, but it might as well be another planet. We'll come in Kansas, Harlan says with a crooked grin. Nothing but sky and wheat till you hit Colorado. The Germans don't laugh. Not yet. The farmhouse looks like something out of an old photograph. 2 stories of weathered wood, a screened porch, a rusted windmill creaking beside a leaning barn. A Ford pickup from before the war sits near the shed, paint mostly gone, fenders held together by stubbornness and wire. Standing in front of the barn, hat in his hands, is Eli Turner. If you saw him without context, you wouldn't pick him out as the center of this story. He's not tall, not imposing, just a stooped, wiry man in his late 50s, shoulders bowed by decades of work. Denim overalls, threadbare shirt, boots scuffed thin. His face looks like someone carved it out of old leather and put 2 sharp, pale eyes in it. Those eyes take everything in. The truck, the MPs, the gray uniformed men stepping onto his land. Morning, Mr. Turner, Harlan calls. Got your harvest help? Eli eyes the Germans for a long moment, then nods once. Hope they can tell wheat from weeds, he says, voice low, gravelly. One of the prisoners chuckles under his breath, translating for the others. They're already unimpressed. At the front of the German group stands Oberfeldwebel Karl Brenner, late 20s, broad-shouldered, with that lazy, feline swagger some NCOs were like a rank of its own. He was Africa Corpse, Rommel's boy, as he likes to remind anyone who will listen. His cuff title is gone now, but the attitude remains. He looks at Eli's bent frame, then at the boy beside him, a lanky teenager of about 17, wiping sleep from his eyes and adjusting his 2 big work gloves. Brenner smirks. Das ist die berühmte Amerikanische Stark, he murmurs to the man beside him. That is the famous American strength. A few of the Germans snicker. One mimics a hunched back with exaggerated severity. The boy hears the laughter even if he doesn't catch the words. He stiffens. Eli doesn't react. If he understands any German, his face doesn't show it. Harlan steps between them, pulling a folded sheet from his pocket. All right, listen up, he says. You're not here for a picnic. War Department says this farm's short on hands, so congratulations, you're all farm labor for the day. You work, you get fed. You try anything stupid, you see my carbine up close. Clear. Brenner tilts his head, eyes gleaming. We fought in Africa, he says in accented English. Thanks. Artillery. Real war. You bring us here to pick grain for old men. His tone drips contempt. One of the other prisoners adds in German, loud enough to carry. Maybe the farmers are afraid to break a nail. More laughter. The Kansas morning watches quietly. Eli finally steps forward. He stops in front of Brenner, close enough that the German can see the deep lines around his eyes, the permanent sunburn around his neck, the way his hands never fully relax, as if they're always about to reach for a tool. Eli's voice is calm. Name, he asks. Brenner lifts his chin. Oberfeldwebel Karl Brenner. Deutsches. Eli cuts him off. Don't need the whole song, he says. You can walk. Brenner blinks. Of course I can walk. You can lift. Eli asks. Brenner's lips curl. I've fought in half the desert. I can lift more than you, Alterman. Good, Eli says. We'll see. He turns and gestures toward the fields, where the wheat stretches away in rolling waves, dew just starting to evaporate. Wheat's ready, he says. Sky don't care you were Africa corpse. Sun don't care either. All it knows is burning. You want shade tonight, you move. There's no anger in it. Just fact. The boy beside him, Tommy Turner, tries to hide a grin behind his hand. Harlan claps once. You heard the man, he says. Pears. Stick with the Turners. Don't wander. Don't argue. You boys wanted to see America? This is it, amber waves and all. He slings his carbine and lights a cigarette. Eli leads the way toward the equipment line. The Germans follow, boots crunching in the dry dirt, heads swiveling to take in the machinery. Old combines, reapers, and tractors lined up like a museum of American improvisation. One machine stands out. A hulking, patched-together pull-type combine, its paint faded to ghosts of green and yellow. Plates have been bolted on where the original metal rusted through. Parts of the reel are different colors, scavenged from who knows where. There's a length of baling wire holding a crack panel in place. Brenner stares at it. This runs? He asks skeptically. Eli pats the side of the machine, affection in the gesture. Most days, he says, long as it has a reason. One of the younger Germans shakes his head. In the Wehrmacht, he says in German, they'd shoot the mechanic for letting it get this bad. Brenner chuckles. Here, they probably give him a medal. They don't bother to lower their voices now. The derision comes easy. Tommy hears them laugh again and flushes red. Huh, he says quietly. They think you're weak. Because of your back. Eli doesn't look at him. Tom, he says, you know what wheat does if you talk to it? Tommy frowns. Nothing. Exactly, Eli says. Same with wheat and same with fools. He grabs the handle and swings himself up onto the tractor seat. Movements slow but economical. Each one counts. He's done this since before half these Germans were born. He looks down at them from the platform. You boys ever cut wheat? He asks. Brenner rolls his shoulders. We know work, he says. We marched in sand. We dug gun pits. We built positions. This is farm game. Farm game. Eli's eyes crinkle at the edges. It's not a smile, so much as an internal joke. All right then, he says. Let's play. He nods toward Tommy. Fire her up. Tommy pulls himself up onto the tractor, hands moving with the confidence of someone who's been doing this since he could see over the wheel. He checks the choke, presses the starter. The engine coughs once, twice, then rumbles into life, sending a vibration through the metal frame all the way into the ground. The combine shudders awake. Blades begin to turn. Belts squeal. Dust and old chaff puff out in a cloud. The Germans watch, half bored, half curious, as the clanking machine lurches toward the sea of wheat. The day hasn't even started yet. Not really. The heat hasn't sunk its teeth in. The sun hasn't reached its cruelest height. And the Germans haven't yet seen what one soft American farmer can do when the harvest is on the line. They will, right after the machine breaks in the middle of the field, and they realize there's no spare, no mechanic, and no one coming from the army to fix it. Just Eli, his hands, and a pile of wire and scrap. By the time the sun clears the horizon, the wheat is glowing. It's not poetic. It's physical. The light slams into the field and turns every head of grain into a tiny mirror, throwing gold back into the sky. The air starts to thicken. Jackets come off. Sweat appears at brows and shirt collars. The combine moves slowly into the sea. From the ground, it looks absurd, an old, patched-together machine with a stooped farmer at the controls, a teenage boy on the tractor, and a handful of German POWs trailing along the margins like skeptical spectators. From Eli's vantage point on the platform, it's a battlefield. He can feel the machine through the soles of his boots, the tug of the header through heavy grain, the whine of the sickle bar, the vibration of belts that have no business still holding together. Every rattling note is a word in a language he's been fluent in since before the Dust Bowl. Tommy steers steady, eyes locked ahead. Eli watches everything else. Keep her straight, he calls over the engine noise. Follow that fence post. We don't like being chased in circles. Tommy lifts a hand in acknowledgement without taking his eyes off the row. Behind them, the Germans walk in the swath the combine leaves behind, assigned to rake and stack any straw that spills out, gather stray bundles, and learn how this strange American harvest works. They aren't impressed. Look at that thing, one snorts in German. Back home they'd send it to the scrapyard. It is a scrapyard, another replies, kicking at a patch of rust flaking off the frame. Brenner walks a little apart from his men, arms folded, field cap tilted back. His eyes track the combine methodically. Years of watching Panzer III suspensions and half-track engines taught him to spot weakness in motion. He sees plenty. That belt is loose, he mutters, half to himself. Those teeth are worn. That flywheel. It's a matter of when, not if. He says it with the smug certainty of a man who knows machines. Eli glances back once, just long enough to see the little clump of field gray uniforms and the way one of them mimics his stooped gait. Then he turns his attention back to the wheat. Time slides in measured strips. The sun climbs. The rows fall. The bin fills. Tommy wipes sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm, leaving a streak of dust. "How long we going before break?" he calls over his shoulder. "When the field's done," Eli says. Tommy doesn't argue. He knows better. A half-mile out from the farmhouse, the world shrinks to the width of the header. Wheat in front, stubble behind. The farmhouse, the barn, the MP's truck, all fade to smudges in the distance. Here it's just man, machine, and heat. Then it happens. It starts as a hitch, a subtle change in rhythm, a judder in the floorboards that only someone like Eli feels. He frowns. The machine shudders again, this time louder. The sickle's song goes off-key, metal scraping metal. "Tom!" Eli barks. "Ease her back. Something's wrong." Tommy throttles down. The combine clanks and rattles to a grudging halt, blades slowly spinning to a stop. Dust swirls around them. The Germans drift closer, sensing entertainment. "What's the matter, alt man?" one calls. "Your tractor is tired already?" Eli steps down from the platform, boots landing in the wheat stubble with a soft crunch. He moves with a stiff economy, no wasted gestures, as he walks to the side of the machine. He doesn't answer. He listens. The engine idles with a rough, steady thrum. That's not the problem. The problem is the smell, faint, acrid like metal overheating, and something that should be moving isn't. He squats beside a panel near the front and presses his hand against it. "Hot. Too hot." Tommy joins him, worried. "What do you think?" "Think we're out of luck if we don't fix it," Eli says. He grabs a wrench from the side toolbox and yanks the panel open. The German POWs crowd closer now, curiosity winning over contempt. Brenner pushes through to the front, peering down into the guts of the machine. Inside, one of the drive chains hangs at a bad angle, half off its sprocket. A metal bracket nearby is cracked clean through, only the last bit of bent steel keeping it from snapping entirely. The chain has chewed into it, heating the metal. Brenner whistles softly. "Kaput," he says. "Finished." One of his men laughs. "Looks like harvest is over." Eli doesn't react to the commentary. He just stares at the damage for a long, silent moment, lips thinning. Tommy's voice drops. "We can't call the dealer, can we?" "There's no dealer anymore, Tom," Eli says. "They're all building tanks or making bullets." He taps the broken bracket with the wrench. "And even if there was one, he's sure as sin wouldn't come out here today just 'cause we ask nice." Tommy swallows. "So what do we do?" Eli straightens slowly, bones popping. He scans the horizon, the miles of wheat still standing, heavy and ready to fall. The sky is bright and merciless. Heat is coming like an advancing army. If this field isn't cut before the next storm or the next week of scorching sun, they lose it. Not some of it. All of it. He wipes his forehead with the back of his wrist, leaving a streak of grime. "We fix it," he says simply. Brenner can't help himself. "With what?" he asks in English. "Prayers." The Germans chuckle. Eli's eyes slide to him, cool and unconcerned. "With what we have," he says. He turns to Tommy. "Go to the tool shed. Bring back everything. Wire, bolts, scrap iron. That old hinge off the barn door, if it's still there." Tommy blinks. "The hinge? Pa, that thing's been—" "Tom," Eli says quietly, "we don't have time to argue with the wheat." Tommy nods and runs, boots crunching through the stubble as he heads back toward the distant speck of the farmyard. The Germans watch him go, then turn back to Eli. "You cannot fix a broken bracket with wire and junk," one says, shaking his head. "We had mechanics in Africa. We know machines. This is impossible." Brenner folds his arms again, but his eyes are sharper now. "Let him try," he says. "We have nothing else to do." He doesn't say what they're all thinking. If the machine dies, they march back to camp, and this whole pointless exercise ends early. Eli climbs up onto the side rail and leans into the open compartment. His hands move over the chain, the sprockets, the cracked bracket. He's not just looking at it. He's seeing it the way a man sees a face he's known for 20 years. He mutters to himself, "Take the strain there, keep the angle, don't let it bite." The sun is climbing now. The wheat is starting to whisper in the rising heat. Minutes later, Tommy reappears, staggering under the weight of a battered toolbox, a coil of baling wire over one shoulder, and a fistful of metal scraps clanking together. He dumps it all in the dust beside the combine, breathing hard. "Everything I could carry," he says. Eli nods. "Good." He kneels beside the pile, sorting through it like a gambler riffling cards. A busted gate hinge, a bent length of strap iron, bolts too long and bolts too short, nails in a coffee can. Wire, always wire. The Germans just stare. To them, repairs mean spare parts, manuals, supply chains. Proper tools, proper components. This looks like desperation. Eli picks up the hinge and holds it against the broken bracket, angling it, testing the fit. He measures with his eyes, not with tape. It's not perfect. It's not pretty, but it might work. He looks up at Tommy. "Hold this," he says, pressing the hinge in place. Tommy braces it with both hands, arms trembling with effort as Eli starts drilling, forcing a bit through steel that doesn't want to yield. The old farmer's shoulders tense, jaw set, veins standing out in his weathered forearms. Sweat runs down his temples. You can almost feel the heat yourself, watching it. Jab, grind, twist. Metal shavings spill out like sparks without the fire. The Germans are quiet now. The laughter is gone, replaced by an odd, reluctant focus. Brenner steps a little closer, eyes following every movement. He has seen battlefield improvisations, welding armor plates with field kits, clamping broken track links with hammers and curses. This is different. This isn't a crew in the desert with a supply truck 30 miles behind them. This is an old man in Kansas with nothing but what he can scavenge from his own land. And he's not panicking. He's thinking. Eli works fast, but not sloppy. The hinge becomes a brace, bolted through with mismatched hardware. Wire wraps around the bracket and frame in tight, methodical loops, forming a tension band that might, if physics is feeling generous, hold the chain in alignment and take the strain once the machine runs again. When he's done, his hands are black with grease and dust. His shirt clings to his back. His breath is heavier, but his eyes are clear. He looks at Tommy. "Let go." Tommy slowly releases the hinge. It stays in place. The chain sits straight. Eli gives a test tug. It doesn't slip. He drops back to the ground, knees protesting. "All right," he says. Moment of truth. "Tom, fire her up." Brenner can't help it. "If it breaks, worse," he says. "You lose everything." Eli looks at him, something flinty in his gaze. "If it breaks worse while we try," he says, "I've still done more than standing here and laughing at it." Tommy climbs onto the tractor again, glancing once at the Germans watching him, then at his father. He pulls the choke, presses the starter. The engine coughs, and for a single, held breath, the whole harvest hangs on whether the old man's wire and scrap will hold. The engine coughs once, twice, then it roars. Not smooth, not factory clean. It comes alive with a ragged, throaty bellow like a smoker waking up angry. The combine shivers, the patch panels rattling in a dozen different keys, belts snapping into motion, sprockets turning, the repaired bracket holding under the first punch of torque. Every eye is on that hinge. The chain wobbles, then settles, then runs. Tommy's grin flashes across his dusty face. "She's holding pine." Eli doesn't smile. Not yet. He lays a hand on the side of the machine, feeling it, listening, not just with his ears, but with every nerve tuned by a lifetime of breakdowns and close calls. The vibration is rough, but stable. "Good enough," he says. "We're burning daylight." Tommy throttles up. The engine's roar deepens. The header lowers. The reel starts its slow, hypnotic spin. The combine rolls forward, back into the sea of wheat. Behind it, the cut swath widens again, order carved out of chaos. Loose stalks fall. Straw dust floats in the air like yellow smoke. The Germans stare at the repaired bracket as they walk. One mutters, "ES hat Nick Functioneer in Solen. It shouldn't have worked." Another answers, "But it did." Brenner walks in silence, brows drawn down. He keeps glancing from the chain to Eli's back, measuring both. He's used to seeing improvisation under pressure. Field repairs in Africa. Crews patching hulls under shell fire. But those men were young, fueled by adrenaline and ideology. This man is old, and he just outperformed some of the Wehrmacht's finest grease monkeys with a barn hinge and wire. The laughter from earlier feels further away with every yard. By mid-morning, the heat arrives like an occupying army. It doesn't sneak in. It comes all at once, slamming down from a sky that's gone from soft blue to hard white. The air thickens. Shadows shrink. The wheat, so cool and pearl-colored at dawn, now shimmers as if viewed through a veil of flame. Shirts darken with sweat. Hats get pulled lower. Everyone's movements slow, except the combines. On the tractor, Tommy's cheeks are flushed, hair plastered to his forehead under the brim of his cap. He squints against the glare, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally wiping his face. Behind him, on the platform, Eli stands like a captain on a listing ship. He doesn't sit. He doesn't lean. He stands. His shoulders may be stooped, but his posture is firm. He adjusts levers, keeps the header at just the right height, watches the grain flow into the bin with the focus of a man guarding treasure. Every now and then, he barks a short instruction to the Germans walking alongside. You pull that bundle clear. Don't let it jam the reel. Stack the straw higher. Air gets under it. It blows away. Keep your heads down when we turn. This old girl doesn't steer for company. The Germans obey, some grudgingly, some with growing interest. Work is work, and soldiers, whatever their flag, know the rhythm of labor under a punishing sky. One tall prisoner, Fritz Albrecht, pauses to wipe his face, chest heaving. He looks up at the sun and mutters, Africa owns sand. Africa without sand. Another laughs weakly. At least in Africa we had trucks. Yeah, Fritz says. And sometimes shade. They glance at the platform, expecting to see the old farmer sagging, maybe calling a break. Eli doesn't even slow. Noon. The combine takes a short pause near the edge of the field so the grain truck can pull alongside. The bin opens. A golden river pours out, rattling against the truck's metal bed, dust exploding upward like smoke. The Germans flop down in the thin strip of shade offered by the combine's wheels and the truck's sidewall. Shirts stick to their backs. One man's hands shake as he fumbles with his canteen. Eli steps down from the platform. His shirt is soaked. There's a line of salt crusted along his hatband. His face is flushed a deep, steady red. He doesn't sit. He walks to the water barrel lashed to the back of the truck, dips a tin cup, and drinks once, long, slow, controlled gulps. Then he refills the cup and hands it to the nearest German. Go easy, he says. This heat'll trick you. You think you could drink the whole barrel and you'll just fall over. The German blinks, surprised at the gesture, then takes the cup. Danke, he mumbles. Eli nods and moves down the line, topping off canteens, nudging men toward the shade, forcing a few to at least crouch. You rest now, he says. 5 minutes. Then we go again. Tommy jumps down from the tractor, land with a wince. His legs are starting to feel like wet rope. 5 minutes, he says. That all. Storm will be here in 2 days. Eli says, jerking his chin at the horizon, where clouds are a faint smudge along the edge of the world. Wind'll take half this field if we don't beat it to the punch. Grain won't wait for your bones to stop complaining. Tommy sighs and stretches his back. Yes, sir. Nearby, Brenner watches this exchange, eyes half-lidded. He nods toward Eli. How old is he? He asks Harlan in halting English. Harlan shrugs. 58, I think. Maybe 59. What? Brenner looks at his own hands, calloused from rifle stocks and sandbags, not plow handles and wrenches. In Africa, he says quietly, most of the men who kept our machines running were half his age. Harlan snorts. Welcome to Kansas. Out here, you work or the land eats you. He taps his cigarette ash onto the dry dirt. That old man's been fighting this farm longer than you've been shaving, he adds. Brenner doesn't argue. 5 minutes pass. Eli checks the sky, then claps his hands once. That's it, he says. Back up. The POWs groan, but obey. The MPs haul themselves up as well, dusting off pant legs. The only people who don't seem to consider quitting an option are Eli and the wheat. Afternoon turns the field into a furnace. The air shimmers. Heat radiates up from the ground so hard that boots feel like they're standing on a stove. Every breath tastes like dust and sunburn. Tommy's arms ache from holding the wheel. His eyes burn from staring at the same pale horizon. Several times he blinks and sees double, the rows of wheat swimming for a moment before snapping back. Behind him, Eli corrects for the tiny mistakes he senses before Tommy even makes them. Watch the slope, he calls. Field dips there. Don't scalp it. Ease her off, Tom. That patch is thicker. Good. Keep her straight. Let the machine do the worrying. On the ground, the Germans' movements have changed. In the morning, they stumbled and joked. Their hands were clumsy with the rakes, their eyes wandering as they gossiped in German and made snide comments about soft Americans. Now, by late afternoon, their shirts are plastered to their backs. Their hair is slick with sweat. Dust clings to their faces in gritty masks. But their bodies have found a rhythm. Grab. Stack. Drag. Grab. stack, drag. The laughter is gone, burned away by the sun and the sheer monotony of physical labor. At one point, Fritz straightens up too fast and sways. His vision pulses black at the edges. A hand grips his arm, steadying him. It's not a guard. It's Eli. Easy, the farmer says. Head rush. Bend your knees first next time. Fritz stares at him, breathing hard. You work like this every day? He pants in German. His English is too far gone in the moment. Eli doesn't understand the words, but he understands the tone. Every day that ends in Y, he replies anyway. He pats Fritz's shoulder once and moves on, climbing back onto the platform. Brenner watches that small exchange, something tightening in his throat. In the Wehrmacht, an old man who couldn't keep up would be assigned lighter duties. Rear area work, or quietly left behind. Here, the old man is the one outpacing them. By early evening, the sun finally begins its slow, reluctant descent. The sky turns from white to gold to a deep, hot orange. Shadows lengthen across the stubble. The field that seemed endless at dawn now bears a wide, raw swath where the combine has passed, rows and rows of cut ground trailing back toward the farmhouse like scars. Tommy's hands tremble on the wheel. Huh, he calls, voice hoarse. How much more? Till dark, Eli says. Tommy swallows. And tomorrow? Same. Eli answers. Till it's done. On the ground, Brenner's steps are slower now. He feels each muscle, each joint complaining. His legs throb in a way they didn't even during some forced marches in Tunisia. He glances at the platform. Eli is still standing, still adjusting, still watching, still working. The man's face is a mask of sweat, dust, and deep lines. His back is bent, yes, but not from surrender, from use. Brenner realizes, somewhere between one aching step and the next, that he hasn't heard the old man complain once. Not about the heat, not about the machine, not about them. He just works. The sky deepens. The first stars begin to prick through the fading light. Fireflies appear at the edges of the field, tiny green lanterns flickering in the growing dusk. Eli finally raises a hand. That's it, he calls. Shut her down, Tom. Tommy throttles back. The engine winds down. The combines roar, choking off into a coughing silence. The field exhales with it. For a moment, all anyone can hear is their own breathing. Then crickets. Then the distant bark of a dog from the farmhouse yard. The Germans slump where they stand, hands on knees, chests heaving. A few simply sit down hard in the stubble, too tired to care about splinters or itch. Eli climbs down from the platform. His legs are stiff. His steps are measured, but his spine is still carrying him. He looks over the field, measuring with his eyes the distance they covered. Not bad, he says softly. For one day, Brenner stares at him, the thought forming before he can censor it. I have never seen a man his age work like that. Not in the Wehrmacht. Not in Africa. Not in those long force marches. He doesn't say it out loud. Not yet. But he will. After supper, when the dust settles and the sky goes dark, the German NCO who mocked soft American civilians will find himself sitting on a Kansas porch, looking at an old farmer's hands and quietly admitting something he never thought he'd say. And when he does, the war, at least in his mind, will never look quite the same again. By the time they trudge back toward the farmhouse, the world has turned to silver and shadow. The heat has bled off the top of the day, leaving behind only a thick warmth and the aching muscles that didn't know they could hurt like this. The field behind them is half shorn, a great dark rectangle carved out of the pale wheat, like someone took a bite from the earth. Fireflies blink along the fence line as the POWs shuffle into the yard. The GMC truck waits where they left it, engine ticking faintly in the cooling air. The MPs lean against the fender, rifles slung casually, watching the stumbling line of gray uniforms with a mixture of boredom and something like respect. These men aren't the same ones who stepped off the truck that morning. Their swagger is gone, baked and beaten out of them by 16 hours behind combine. Dust streaks their faces. Their field caps hang limp. A few of them limp, not from bullet wounds, but from blisters raised in boots never meant for plowed ground. Tommy almost falls off the tractor when he climbs down. His legs are rubber. His arms shake. He slaps the side of the engine affectionately. Good girl, he mutters. You gave us everything you had. Eli steps down from the platform, landing heavier than he'd like. His knees protest. His lower back feels like it's been struck with a hammer. He rolls his shoulders once. The gesture says, you can hurt later. Right now, there's still work to do. Tom, he says, see to the fuel lines and cover her. Du gets in there, We'll be right back where we started. Tommy nods and grabs a tarp without complaining. Even exhausted, he knows the rules. You don't leave a machine naked to the night. Across the yard, Harlan claps his hands. All right, Krauts, he calls, tone lighter than the slur. Line up. We'll get you back to your country club. He expects groans, maybe a muttered insult. What he gets is silence. The Germans obey, but slowly, as if some part of them is still out there in the field, moving behind the header. As they're mustering, Eli wipes his hands on a rag and walks over. Corporal, he says to Harlan, you mind if I send him back with full bellies? Harlan raises an eyebrow. They had camp rations before they left. They'll get him again when they're back. Camp rations won't do much after a day like this, Eli says quietly. Got stew on. Bread. Enough to share. Harlan frowns, weighing regulations against common sense. There's nothing in the rules that says he has to allow it. There's nothing that says he can't, either. He shrugs. Long as they don't go inside the house. Yard only. And my partner and I eat first. Eli snorts. You'll get the first bowl, don't you worry. Harlan turns to the prisoners. You boys just got lucky, he says. Farmer here wants to show you how soft Americans eat. A flicker runs through the line at the word. Eli nods toward a long wooden table under the cottonwood near the porch. It's already set with mismatched bowls and tin cups. Come on then, he says. Food's getting cold. The POWs hesitate. They're used to orders, not invitations. Brenner is the first to step forward. He leads his men toward the table, boots scuffing the dirt. As they get closer, their eyes widen at what's in the pots. Not watery soup, not a crust of bread and a scrap of meat. Thick beef stew, steam rising in rich, curling waves. Potatoes, carrots, onions. The smell alone makes their knees wobble. Beside it, loaves of homemade bread set out on cutting boards, crusts cracked from the oven. A woman moves between the pots, ladle in hand. Martha Turner, Eli's wife. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, apron smeared with flour and gravy, eyes sharp enough to cut rope. Eli, you dragged these boys through my field just to star them under my tree, she says, mock scolding. Dish up, or get out of the way. She starts ladling stew into bowls, not skimping. Each German gets a full scoop, then another. The bread is cut thick. When she gets to Brenner, she studies his face for a second. You look like you were expecting worse, she says. Brenner fumbles his English. We did not expect this. Martha sniffs. You work like mules, you eat like men. That goes for all of you. The POWs take their bowls, hands shaking, not from fear but from sheer, overwhelming hunger. Some of them murmur, danky. Others just nod, eyes already locked on the food. They sit on rough benches, backs against the cottonwood. The first spoonful is almost reverent. Then they eat like the starving. Harlan and his fellow MP, Private Lewis, stand off to the side, bowls in hand, watching. You know, Lewis says, this is the part that makes me think we're going to win. What, the stew? Harlan asks. No, Lewis says, nodding toward the POWs and the Turners. This, right here, we can fight and still feed the men who shot at us. He shrugs. I don't think Berlin works like that. Harlan doesn't answer, but he doesn't disagree either. Later, when the bowls are empty and the bread is down to crumbs, the Germans sit back, staring at the sky through the cottonwood branches. Fireflies blink around them. The farmhouse windows glow with lamplight. Tommy slumps on the bottom step of the porch, boots off, socks dirty, staring at his blistered feet with bleary eyes. Eli stands a few feet away, leaning against a post, mug of coffee in his hands. He looks as if he might have grown out of the wood itself, as much a part of the structure as the beams and nails. Brenner approaches, bowl held carefully in both hands. He clears his throat. Farmer Turner, he says. Eli glances at him. Eli's fine. Farmer Turner, sounds like you're about to sue me. Brenner misses the joke, but he recognizes the opening. Eli, he says slowly. I should say something. He searches for the words, feeling their unfamiliar weight on his tongue. This morning, he continues, I told my men you were schwach. Weak. Soft. He gestures vaguely at Eli's back. You are not young, he adds, as if this needs clarification. Martha, listening from the porch doorway, snorts softly. Eli sips his coffee, saying nothing. Brenner's jaw tightens. I have seen men march in the desert until their tongues swelled, he says. In Africa, I watched mechanics work 18 hours straight under shell fire to get a panzer moving before dawn. I thought that was the limit of what a man could do. He looks at Eli, eyes dark in the lamplight. Today, he says quietly, I watched you fix a machine that should not run, then stand on it and work from sunrise until the sky was red. He glances at his own hands, at the faint tremor that hasn't left since they stepped off the field. Without complaint, he lifts the empty bowl slightly, like a glass in a toast. I did not think a man your age could do that, he admits. Outside the Wehrmacht, the yard is very still for a moment. Even the crickets seem to pause. Eli looks at him, expression unreadable. Then he shrugs, a small, nonchalant roll of the shoulders that would be funny if his back didn't clearly hurt. Land doesn't care what outfit you're in, he says. Doesn't care about your age. Doesn't care about your medals. It just knows if you're lazy. He taps his chest with 2 fingers. You work, it gives. You don't. He tips his head toward the dark beyond the fence. It takes you. That's all. Brenner swallows. In the army, he says, we talk about duty to the fatherland. Honor. Discipline. You talk about fields. Eli smirks faintly. Farm's my front line. Wheat's my enemy and my paycheck. Doesn't leave much room for speeches. He nods toward the field, now just a darker patch against the night. You boys probably think you're the only ones who know about fighting a thing that wants to kill you, he says. You should have seen this place in 36. Dust storms so bad you had to tie a rope from the house to the barn just to not get lost in your own yard. He takes another sip of coffee. We stayed, he adds simply. We fought it. We're still here. Brenner stares at him. He'd heard rumors, even back in Germany. Whispers about the Dust Bowl in American papers. The story spun as proof of capitalist failure. But it was always abstract. An anecdote. A cartoon in der Stürmer. Here, under this Kansas sky, the story is standing in front of him, boots in the dirt, mug in hand. I thought. Brenner begins, then stops. The admission is harder than any day in the wheat. I thought only soldiers knew this kind of suffering, he finishes. Eli's gaze softens. Just a fraction. Work's work, he says. Pain's pain. You don't have to be in uniform to meet either one. Tommy, listening from the porch steps, looks between them with wide eyes. He's never heard his father talk this much to anybody outside the family. Certainly not to a German who was shooting at Americans a year ago. Martha steps out with a dish towel in her hands. You going to stand out here talking philosophy all night, she says, or are you going to let these boys get back before Uncle Sam sends someone to ask where his prisoners went? Harlan checks his watch. She's got a point, he says. Truck's got to roll. Brenner hesitates, bowl still in his hands. Then, in a gesture that would have gotten him laughed out of some barracks, he offers his right hand. To you, Eli Turner, he says. Farmer. Mechanic. Not soft. The words taste strange in his mouth. Eli looks at the hand for a moment. Then he shifts his mug to his left and takes it. His grip is firm. Calloused. Real. For a heartbeat. It isn't a prisoner and a farmer. It's 2 men who have both fought things bigger than themselves. Desert and dust, orders and weather, armies and crop prices, and somehow stayed standing. Brenner lets go and steps back. As the POWs climb into the truck, he glances once more at the dark outline of the field. Tomorrow, he calls to Eli, you do this again? Eli nods. And the day after. Till it's done. Brenner shakes his head, almost in disbelief. I will tell them in the camp, he says. About Kansas farmers. They will not believe me. Harlan smirks. Tell him anyway. Maybe they'll behave better if they think every farmer's secretly a drill sergeant. The truck engine rumbles to life. The prisoners settle onto the wooden benches, cradling their full stomachs, muscles already tightening as the day catches up. As the truck pulls away, dust trailing behind it like smoke, Brenner looks back over the tailgate. Eli is still there, standing in the yard beside his son, one hand on Tommy's shoulder, the other still wrapped around his coffee mug. For the first time since he set foot in America, Oberfeldwebel Karl Brenner understands something that no propaganda leaflet ever told him. The people who build the factories and cut the wheat and keep the machines running are not soft. They're just fighting a different kind of war. And somewhere, deep in his chest, a new and dangerous thought takes root. If this is how their civilians work, what does their army look like when it really comes home? The truck disappears into the dark. The Turners turn back toward the silent house. And tomorrow, before dawn, the wheat will be waiting. July 5th, 1944. Kansas. 4:47 a.m. The second morning looks exactly like the first. Except it doesn't. The sky is the same pale line over the edge of the earth. The wheat still stands in heavy rows, waiting. The farmhouse windows glow with the same early lamplight. The air has that same thin coolness that promises to vanish by 8 o'clock. But the men climbing off the GMC truck walk differently. The first day, the German POWs had stepped down in loose, half-mocking swagger, Smiles, jokes, a few exaggerated groans for show. Today, there's a stiffness in their shoulders that has nothing to do with pride and everything to do with the way leg muscles seize after a 16-hour shift. Fritz grips the side panel a little longer before dropping to the dust. Brenner hops down last, boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. He rolls his neck, wincing at a knot near his shoulder blade. His eyes scan the yard out of habit. Eli is already outside. No one saw him come out of the house, but there he is, standing by the barn, hat on, boots laced, coffee mug in one hand, the other resting on the fender of the patched Ford pickup. His posture carries the same quiet readiness as yesterday. Tommy emerges a moment later, tying his boots on the porch steps, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Corporal Harlan stifles a yawn as he jumps from the back of the truck. He's as sore as the Germans, not from work, but from standing watch under the same sun. "Morning, gentlemen," he says. "Welcome back to Sena, Kansas. Wheat's still here, in case you were worried." Fritz mutters, "It haunts my dreams." Brenner glances at Eli. This time, he doesn't see an old man. He sees the man who made a junkyard combine live and then worked them all into the dirt. "Guten Morgen," he calls unprompted. "Good morning." Eli nods. "Morning," he answers. "Hope you didn't think yesterday was the whole show. We've got more field to tame." There's no gloat in his tone, no "I told you so." Just fact. Tommy hops up onto the tractor like a boy who doesn't know his legs should probably revolt. He does it slower than yesterday, but he does it. Martha appears briefly at the doorway with a dish towel over her shoulder. "You eat before you go," she shouts at Tommy. "Piece of bread at least." Tommy snatches a heel of bread from a plate on the porch rail as he climbs past, biting it as he settles into the seat. Brenner sees that, clocks it, files it away. "You feed your horse before you ride it," he mutters to Fritz in German, nodding toward the boy. Fritz smirks. "You calling him a horse now?" Brenner shrugs. "Today he is." The second day unfolds like a bruised mirror of the first. The machine runs, Eli's improvised bracket holding like it was made for the job. The wheat falls in long, steady swaths. The sun climbs, and the heat presses down. The dust coats every surface, every throat. But the rhythm has changed. The Germans don't joke as much as they did that first morning. They already know what's coming. Their bodies fall into the labor with fewer stumbles, fewer wasted movements. Eli barks fewer orders. He doesn't need to repeat himself. At one point, a German named Hans slips in the stubble and nearly goes under the moving reel. Brenner lunges, grabbing the back of his shirt and yanking him out of danger. Hans hits the ground on his backside, eyes wide. Eli kills the engine in an instant, the combine shuddering to a stop. He jumps down, boots thudding. "You all right?" he asks, scanning Hans's limbs. Hans nods shakily. "Ja, yes. I'm okay." Eli looks between him and Brenner. "Good catch," he says to the Oberfeldwebel, with a brief, genuine nod. Brenner feels that more than he expected. He's been praised by officers before, in clipped German, with mention of fatherland and duty. This is different. It's small, simple, but it hits something almost forgotten. Tommy calls out from the tractor, "We good, Pa?" "We're good," Eli replies. "Just keep her pointed where the wheat's thickest. We don't need to make the field pretty, just empty." The machine growls back to life. They work. By late afternoon, the last rows of wheat on Eli's land stand alone, thin fingers of gold holding out against the steel. Eli senses the finish line even before he sees it. "Tom," he shouts over the roar. "This pass, and one more." Tommy whoops, a ragged sound of victory. On the ground, the Germans feel it too. Their steps are leaden, but there's a flicker in them, an animal awareness of labor nearing its end. Harlan wipes sweat from his neck with his bandana. "You boys realize," he calls to Lewis, "we just watched an old man, a kid, and a bunch of prisoners harvest what should have taken 3 crews." Lewis grunts. "Don't know if that says more about them or about how desperate the War Department's getting for manpower." "Maybe both," Harlan says. The combine chews through the last strip, wheat bowing, then falling, then feeding into the maw. When it's done, Eli lifts his hand. "Cut it." Tommy throttles down. This time, when the engine dies, the silence feels earned. The field is bare now, an enormous, brush-cut rectangle stretching to the horizon. The wheat is gone, transformed into grain in bins and trucks, into something that will become bread and rations and calories for men in uniform on the other side of the world. Tommy swings down from the tractor, landing with an exhausted groan. "We did it," he says, half in celebration, half in disbelief. Eli surveys the field with the calm of a man who has lived his entire life on the edge of did it and lost it. Yeah, he says softly. This year, anyway. The Germans stand in a loose cluster, hands on hips, sucking in lungfuls of evening air. Some lean on their rakes. Some just stand very still, listening to their hearts pounding. Brenner steps forward, wiping a line of grime from his cheek with his wrist. In Africa, he says, we used to say the fuel trucks won the battle before the tanks arrive. Today I see something similar. Eli looks at him. Yeah. You cut this, Brenner says, gesturing at the bald field. This goes to your trains, your ships, your soldiers. I spent years trying to outfight your tanks with our tanks. Today I realize, he shakes his head in disbelief, we were also fighting your wheat. He laughs once, bitter and amazed all at once. We never saw it, he says. We saw the armor. We did not see the men in fields behind it. Eli sips from his canteen. A lot of fights get decided far from where the bullets land, he says. My daddy used to say, armies march on their bellies, not their boots. I guess Napoleon said it first. But we listened anyway. He nods toward the truck already being loaded with grain. That there, he says, that's a bullet your boys don't run out of. For the first time, one of the Germans, Hans, chuckles. You speak like staff officer, he says. But you wear overalls. Overalls are just a different kind of uniform, Eli replies. The next morning, the Germans don't return to the Turner farm. The War Department has other fields that need bodies, other farmers short on sons and hired hands. The POW labor pool is shuffled around like cards in a deck, moved from one county to another under escort. But word travels faster than trucks. At the camp outside town, men gather in the corner of a barracks after lights out, listening as Brenner recounts his 2 days in the wheat. He describes the broken combine, the hinge and wire. The old man who worked from dawn to dusk without a single complaint, with a kind of stubborn dignity that reminded them uncomfortably of their own fathers and uncles, the ones who stayed home to keep German field alive while they went off to war. One skeptic snorts. American are born. You exaggerate. Brenner shakes his head. I have seen panzer crews patch a tank under fire, he says. I have watched sappers build a bridge in a night. This farmer, he is the same. Just no medals, no marches, no songs. He leans back on the rough bunk, staring at the ceiling. We called them soft, he says quietly. We were wrong. A hush settles. In the corner, a younger POW asks, do you think all of them are like that? Brenner thinks of Martha with her ladle, of Tommy with his blistered hands, of Eli's wire-wrapped bracket holding against steel and strain. Not all, he says, but enough. Months later, after the war has shifted east and north, after the Allies have taken Rome and landed in Normandy, Eli's wheat makes its own silent journey. Grain cars rattle along rails that stretch all the way to ports with names like New Orleans and Galveston. From there, the wheat is loaded onto Liberty ships bound for England, for North Africa, for staging areas feeding the men who will eventually crack open Germany itself. Somewhere, a GI in the 1st Infantry Division wolfs down a slice of bread in a muddy hedgerow and doesn't know he's eating Kansas. Somewhere else, a crew chief on NKP-17 swallows a spoonful of cereal before takeoff, not knowing it was born in a field harvested by men in gray watched over by a man in denim. The war engines run. Behind them, the combines keep humming. Years later, after the shooting stops, after flags change and prisoners are repatriated, an older, thinner Karl Brenner stands in a different field. This one near Ulm, in a beaten Germany trying to remember how to feed itself. He is not in uniform now. His Africa Corps cuff title is gone. So is the swagger. He stops halfway through lifting a sack of seed and straightens his aching back, eyes tracking the dusty road as a truck rumbles past. On its side is a marking he never thought he'd see off a battlefield. A white star. The truck bed is loaded with sacks stamped USA, flour, and relief. Children run behind it, laughing, pointing. Brenner watches silently. He thinks of Kansas, of that patch combine, of an old man named Eli Turner fixing the unfixable with scrap and stubbornness. He realizes something that makes his throat tight. The same country that fed its own army with wheat like that is now feeding the people who once tried to break it. He sets down the sack he's carrying and stares at his hands. They remember the weight of a rake in Kansas stubble. For the rest of his life, when someone in a tavern in post-war Germany complains that Americans are lazy or soft, he will shake his head quietly and say, "You have never seen their farmers." And somewhere, thousands of miles away, Eli Turner will be out in his field again, older, slower, but still walking the rows at dawn, checking the grain, listening to the land, unaware that a man who once marched under Rommel now uses his name as the measure for what hard work means. Because for Eli, it was never about proving anything to a German sergeant. It was about beating the storm, saving the crop, doing the job. And that is the quiet, unglamorous, iron truth at the heart of this story. Some of the strongest people in the Second World War never wore a helmet. They wore sweat-stained hats, threadbare shirts, and boots full of dust. They fought with hinges and wire instead of rifles, with 16-hour days instead of bayonets. And somewhere in a Kansas field in 1944, a group of German POWs learned that the hard way, one blister, one bowl of stew, one bent-back farmer at a time.